Some of the good news is that this particular project versus, say, the Ive Center, which is another authority that we created, is that there is a large pledged endowment that we haven't received yet, but it is out there, and we're waiting. There also are assets that are significant that the museum owns, property, buildings, items in the museum itself, that have value to them. So it's a little bit different kind of organization in the sense that there's some significant assets and resources to the museum. My proposal is that we create an authority similar to what we did with the Ive Center, and then we adopt the ordinance, get the authority running, appoint the members in the fall, get everything organized, and then begin an assessment in terms of operating budget and income that they're already receiving and look at how best to balance that out. Certainly, I do see us, particularly as it relates to other organizations that we're going to be starting to transition away from funding, i.e. the Bowden Street Y is in their last year of their transitional funding. We're going to slowly, in the next budget, wean them off of that funding. So that I don't see any major financial impact at this time to the city. But again, we have the impact anyways because if the Museum Historical Society became insolvent, it would be our responsibility to take over those buildings and somehow manage them and keep them going. So I view this as a very much a proactive step in terms of what we can do. And there may be some opportunities to leverage the endowment for cash flow. It's something that we can discuss a little bit further on. But at this time, again, we're not looking for any kind of financial appropriation to begin this process. Does that answer that?
Thank you, Mayor Patton. I have a couple questions for Richard. Richard, can you give us an overview of what's your present infrastructure along with the costs associated with operating the museum at the present time?
Okay, we have
generally paying your debt in terms of get revenue?
We are carrying no debt.
Okay. Very good. Any questions, John?
Just one kind of quick question. Did I hear you say federal funding? Did you mention federal? State funding.
Yes.
Okay.
Although we have applied on the federal level for funding, we always, federal grant writing is a whole other schematic.
At the present time, there's no federal.
Time there is no federal funding, although we have
State.
seen CDBG money through the HUD and City of Danbury program. So
What would be my state funding? How does that
that's been on a granting basis mostly for activities. For instance, our Rochambeau activity, $100 to help on that. Our 225th anniversary of running Danbury, we received state funding for that. The renovation and restoration of the Ryder House and the Mary Anderson Studio were both helped by state bond money. Without those state bond money, we would not be able to restore those two buildings. It's projects thing.
Okay.
And for instance, should this go through, which we're very hopeful about, we need to renovate and restore
You have to
Charles
apply.
Ives' house, and we'll be applying for
Yeah.
state bond money to do that, not putting the burden on the Danbury taxpayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, probably to Bridget, with the implementation of the authority, I mean, do you see this as a boost for more donations, more memberships?
Absolutely. I think that once we become a museum authority, we're going to have a higher profile, which we've been striving towards the last several years anyway with all of our restoration work. And this higher profile will hopefully be able to help us leverage better fundraisers, and we can do that with the city's help. We're not anticipating that the city is going to cover all of our costs. I'm anticipating that our fundraising is going to only excel as we go through the next several years, and hopefully the city behind us will be able to receive many funds.
Are there any further questions? Lynn?
Either Bridget or Jim, can you describe the other infrastructure, are there people who do make you
With board and move down to staff and volunteers. We have 13 active board members. Jim is our board president, and most of our members actually are in the Danbury area. We have 2 staff members, myself full-time, Levi Newsom, who's the director of museum operations, who's there 15 hours a week, and our bookkeeper, who is there 8 hours a week. We have some part-time summer help, Caitlin Ivester, who's been with us the last 2 summers, and we have a huge cadre of volunteers. The master gardeners in the state of Connecticut take care of the garden. We have 6 people who are working on transcriptions inside the museum. We have a lovely intern through the Mayor's City program who's been with us for last week, will be with us the rest of the summer. We generally have 2 internship opportunities available in each college semester. We've only filled 1 spot this summer, but we're hoping to have 2 in the fall. And those interns provide us with a lot of basic work, office work and archival work, which is integral to what we do.
Mr. Chairman, one additional question to you.
Certainly.
You do have a lot of assets, but are any of these assets liabilities,
Well, I like to think that they're all positive features of the museum, but anyone who owns their own home knows that you never know what's going to happen in that home, and we have 7. So yes, we've worked the last 5 years to make sure that our buildings on our Main Street campus at least are in as good a condition as they could possibly be. But yes, could something go wrong next week? Absolutely. But at the same time, those buildings provide more than just a shelf in the museum's collection. Those are the basis of our collection. Those historic buildings tell the story of Danbury's past from a variety of different perspectives and just highlight all of the other wonderful pieces that Danbury citizens have given us that we have on exhibit within the buildings. And they're available to the Danbury public as well as general public at large.
and through the chair, I don't know who would answer this question. When you become an authority through this ordinance, are you then allowed to bond or borrow against the assets that you have for capital?
I believe that we can. I know that other authorities have in the past. I believe Richter Park has received bond money.
You do have the capacity, you have the authority to bond and to borrow. Whether or not you can get somebody to underwrite that would depend on your revenue stream and whether or not you can demonstrate to bond counsel that you can actually pay back whatever you any of the authorities at the point just can't go out willy-nilly bonding. They have to present a pro forma to a bank and to counsel, to somebody like will underwrite it, because you're not gonna underwrite anything in a flat revenue or a negative revenue situation.
Ben?
Thank you. Again, through the chair, just a few questions. Regarding the endowment fund itself, is that transferable, or is that considered a restricted fund?
It should be able to transfer that. We have about $90,000 in endowment as we speak, and we have a $1 million bequest, which is, it's currently located in New Mexico, in Roswell, New Mexico, and upon the death of a certain individual, we will receive those funds as well as a huge number of artifacts. To the tune of, the artifacts themselves are worth about $500,000.
We're not hoping that happens anytime
No,
soon.
absolutely not. He was a wonderful gentleman, and, we wish him a long and happy life, but that is something that the museum will, at some point receive, and it is transferable. We've spoken to the trust manager in New Mexico, and, depending on what happens, here, we then need to contact the Mexico courts, and through their legal system, transfer the money to the fund.
Again, just continue following up, but again, regarding the endowment fund, you weren't sure whether or not would that be, in connection with Corporation Council, would you negotiate, make sure that would be transferable before? And there's a few other questions. Regarding the transition from one old board to the new authority, I guess there'll be costs associated with that. Who would bear those costs of the county? I mean, before the city takes it over, there would be an inventory of all the archives, some kind of appraisal of the building. Who would bear those costs? Would that be city costs?
I
Or
assume
the
the
old?
museum would, although, we have up-to-date materials on that, so we'd be happy to share that with the city. But if there's legal costs associated with it, we have already had our attorney on retainer, who's already started looking into the process for us and will represent us throughout this, so we do plan to pay those costs.
And then just following up, regarding the active board, would they still continue to serve on the new authority, or would that be
I think that would be at the discretion of the mayor. Many of them have, voiced the opinion that they would like to continue serving, but that would be up to the mayor.
but it was something like similar to the Ives Center, where a lot of them, they got basically very tired and overworked, and that's not the case. This board is very eager, basically to, if available, to continue. So I guess that would happen as well. And I guess this one more follow-up, if I may, Mike.
Certainly.
One of the things, again, as to expand some of the duties of the historical center, one of the things that I've been kind of looking at for quite a while now, and maybe, the mayor could voice his opinion on it as well, is regarding some of our local older cemeteries, in the city. A lot of them are being overrun, knocked down. I mean, there seems not to be a good accountability of those cemeteries. I know the city maintains the grass, but it seems that's all that really gets taken care of. Would this be something that the Historical Society wanted to be?
I think I'm in a good position to answer that. The Danbury gravestone project is run by our board member and trustee, Robert Young, who has a very, very same interests, actually, as yourself in making sure that these cemeteries are well cared for. To that end, he's created a separate 501c3, or we're working with the state to create a separate 501c3 to build his own group to work on this. And we're more than happy to help with the museum, which we have been, as Bob and our volunteers have been cataloging the cemetery records for the last several years. In addition to hall records, there are all sorts of sexton records, and we've been transcribing those and making it easier to identify what's still there and what might be missing, which is, of course, key to understanding what cemeteries are.
So if this authority, which again, I'm in favor of the authority, so if this does come into reality, that would be something that
Absolutely.
you could consider him going out, forming a 501c3, and into the same problems of volunteerism, change. This could be something that you could put onto your plate as well.
Well, if I just want to interject, Mr. Chairman, I just think you have to be careful about that, because I don't think that the authority would have the capacity to maintain cemeteries. And I just want to be clear that that's not really in the role and mission of what the authority will be doing. Certainly, we're sympathetic to some of the cemeteries in the city that have fallen ill repair. The problem is it's a slippery slope once you begin to one, you've got to take care of all of them. And there's no real means test to say, well, Worcester should get this treatment and Margaret should get this treatment. It becomes a real problem. But I don't know, and I don't want to speak for Bridget, but I don't think the authority wants to get involved in maintaining
Probably not the actual, I'm not
cemeteries.
good with weed whacker, so that would be kind of hard, but I do think that maintaining the records of the cemeteries, making those records accessible to the public, continuing with our transcription process and helping the volunteers gather to work on saving what's left of the really beautiful cemetery stones in the city is something that we can absolutely get behind, but you're right, the actual care and maintenance might be beyond us.
Bridget, one other question. As of right now, is there any grant monies in play right now coming from the state? Can we expect any money from the state within the next few months?
I am applying for money to help us with our lecture program and our musical series, which will cover the cost of those programs which run September through May. And that cost is several $1,000s. And by the state helping us cover the cost, then we can offer them for free to the public. Currently, we have several grants that are due at the end of August. Whether we'll win them, I keep my fingers crossed that we're going to get them. That will help us defray some of our other building expenses. But at this moment, we're not involved in any state bonding issue. We've closed out the 2 bonds with Ryder and Anderson, and we cannot apply for state bonding help through the DECD for the Ives House until this question is answered as to what direction the museum is going to go.
Typically, from the date of proposal, from when you find out whether you're awarded the grant, how long does that take?
Depends on the grants. For instance, we receive grants from the local banks, and they tell us within 7 months that money is awarded within the next month and a half. If it's state bond money, that's a 2-year project.
2 years?
Just through the application, by the time we actually receive the funding, and by the time we put out to bid for the help to implement whatever the grant is, most of go through the architectural preservation work, which is what we've been doing the last several years. So, that can take longer. Federal granting can take approximately the same amount of time. But there are lots of other small grants that are local that answer in a quicker manner. So,
Do you have a person on board that actually does the writing?
we'll have to
You? Okay. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councilman Rotella?
Thanks, Mike. Through the chair to Bridget or the director, are there any plans in the next couple of months to dispose of any assets? I know that you sold an extraordinary painting a couple of months ago, unfortunately.
We did sell the Ryder painting.
Anything else in the pipeline?
Yes. We have, as I mentioned, for the last 5 years, we've been restoring the buildings. And the last year and a half, I turned my attention to the collection. We have received a tremendous number of artifacts in the museum that we use on a temporary and permanent basis to explore Danbury history. And some of those don't touch on Danbury history. And our space is tight, so we've been doing an evaluation of both archival and material culture pieces in our collection. And anything that doesn't meet the criteria of the museum is being deaccessioned. I don't think that we have anything in the collection that is as extraordinary as the Ryder, the Chauncey Ryder piece that you mentioned. But there are several archival pieces, books, smaller furniture pieces that don't relate to the history of Danbury that will be most likely sold off within the next few months.
But this would be
It's
in
healthy.
the normal, if I may, in the normal context of your operations.
Yes.
It would not be an extraordinary event to raise funds in a
This is-
desperate situation
this is
to
not a
get you
stopgap
through.
measure.
Right, it's not a stopgap.
This is something that needs to happen for the health of the museum. Most major museums go through an internal process, it's called deaccession, once every 5 years. We haven't done it in about 20 years. We've done some small deaccessions along the way. We had one painting deaccession several years ago that was tremendous, but we haven't had a chance to really explore the entire collection in a while. That's what we're doing now.
One more question. The mayor, his honor alluded to, if the organization were to falter, the city could repossess the assets, or I guess the city owns the assets to begin with, something like that.
We end up owning.
We will end up with it anyway. So my question would be that if this council ultimately rejects the proposal and the museum fails, we're gonna wind up with it in any event, is that correct? So we'd be back here figuring out something to keep, because I assume the city wants to keep this alive, So regardless of whether we do it now in a more, as you, I guess, mentioned, a proactive measure, or we wait until there's a disaster in 6 months or a year, it's gonna be back here at some point. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and if I could just interject with that, I don't wanna demean the hard work of the existing board, they do a great job, and we're thankful to Jim and to Jim Arcani before him and everybody that's worked on this project. The challenge for me is that I don't wanna see another Hearthstone Castle, and I don't wanna see another Richter House, where we end up getting back these assets, nobody sort of wants to do anything about it, and we become penny wise and pound foolish, and later on, we have 5, 7 buildings that are falling apart, and all this history is lost, because we could have intervened early and done something about it. So this is a unique opportunity for us to intervene now, and still tap into the talent and wealth of the board that's sitting, for those individuals that wish to continue their participation, and really build on something when we have assets and when we have cash flow and all the good things going on. So the timing is really right for this move by the city.
Thank you, Ronnie. Are there any further questions, comments?
Maybe, Jim can also allude to this, because I was speaking to you a little bit just as you were walking in here. One of the positive things as well is that some of those overhead costs that you were running are substantially reduced. If you want to just tell them what you told me, because
Well,
that'll be a positive.
we foresee that because of our the bulk rates that the city pays is much cheaper for utilities than what we pay. It'll reduce our operating costs. And right now, we're on basically a break-even edge. And by just reducing those utility costs, it will make us that much more profitable very easily, almost doing nothing.
So through synergies.
Yes,
in
through
terms of
synergies with
buying
the
power.
city, buying power, exactly.
Good. Thank you, Jim. Any further questions, any comments? At this time, I'd like to ask a motion.
I'll make a motion that we grant the petitioner's request and establish the Danbury Museum and Historical Society Authority.
Is there a second?
Second motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second by Councilman Esposito. All those in favor?
Aye.
Voted unanimous. Okay, are there any further questions? Discussion, Lynn?
If not, we'll
I believe that this is a request for an ordinance, isn't it?
Yes.
So this would go to a.
It'd be referred to public hearing, that's correct.
And is there an ordinance to see?
There is, it's in your council packet, but we can get you a copy if you want.
Okay, 7:00, folks. Let's
Good,
call,
we're
I
good,
wanna
yeah.
call this meeting to order. This is the ad hoc committee charged to review the proposed ordinance, administration of military leave service. I'm Jane Diggs, and I'm the chair of this ad hoc committee. Other committee members, we have Pauline Basso and John Esposito. Others in the room, we have the Labor Council, Diane Rosemark. We have the Director of Personnel, Virginia Werner, and we have Mayor Mark Boughton. We also have our petitioner, Thomas Sadi, I'm sorry, and we have members from the greater Danbury community. Let's just get right into this proposal, and I want to turn everything over to Tom Sadi, so that, and I want you to speak first, because I'd like to know why you want this to become an ordinance, and then we'll turn it over to the Labor Council, just to determine the legal language and everything, and then we'll also hear some remarks from the Personnel Council as well as Mark. And then lastly, I'll open it up for questions. Okay, so Tom, let's get started.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the petition. First of all, I want to thank the Director of Personnel, and I was forwarded the current military leave policy that the mayor put in place, I believe it was shortly after 9/11 in 2001. And it is a very good policy, and I discussed this with the mayor a little bit, and I think that, because of the increased, what we call operations tempo or missions with regard to the war on terror, and that almost 6 years now has passed, that maybe the policy could be adjusted a bit. I know there are labor implications, contract implications, I appreciate that, and the city does have a good policy currently, and I think it is better, and the mayor will speak to this himself, than what many other municipalities have. I just want to take a look at it, and in particular, if there's an opportunity with regard to compensating reservists and members of the Guard who are deployed for differential in pay. What happens oftentimes is individuals are deployed now for much more lengthy periods of time than anticipated even 5, 6, or 10 years ago. And very often, the pay that they will make on a deployment, depending on where they're deployed, may be less than what they're making as a municipal employee. That has much broader implications than just a cut in pay, but also potentially loss of financial wherewithal with regard to paying mortgages. Even though there are protections for members of the military, those protections don't necessarily compensate for the loss of income that may occur when they're deployed or mobilized. So that's really the impetus behind this, and I don't think any of us in the beginning of this war on terror realized probably the implications of prolonged deployments and the impact, particularly on reservists and members of the Guard. I don't know how many employees within the city of Danbury would be covered by this, and just to state for the record, because there was a rumor that this doesn't affect elected officials. Myself being in the reserves, I get no benefit from this proposal because I don't get paid by the city, as do any of our council members. So it's not something for politicians, it's for employees. And I think that really lays it out and throw it on the table just to talk about how to maybe approach it.
Okay, all right. Any comments on that, Diane?
I do actually, thank you, Councilwoman. I actually prepared a spreadsheet, if you will, comparing the current city policy, Councilman Sadi's proposal, and USERRA, which is the federal law governing military leave benefits. And if you may, with your indulgence, I'd like to pass it out to the members so that you can take a look and see what I'm referring to. Mayor? Jenny, do you already have a copy, or I can give you another one? Actually, Jenny, I might if I take that back. Thank you. What I'd like to point out first is that obviously the federal law, USERRA, provides the floor, if you will, the minimum benefits to which an employer must adhere. Beyond that, an employer may provide greater benefits. So if in our policy we're silent on a particular issue, we always have to defer to USERRA. But in fact, as you can see, we are actually very generous in our benefits as far as salary and health insurance, and we provide greater benefits than USERRA requires. For instance, as far as salary, while an employee is in training, the city will pay the difference between the military pay and the city's base pay for a maximum of 30 calendar days a year. Now that is actually Connecticut state law, but we have also provided for employees on active duty, we will pay the difference in salary for a maximum of 180 days. As far as health insurance, we do also provide greater benefits than those provided for in USERRA. For 2 months following leave for active service, the city maintains health insurance at no cost to the employee and his or her dependents. And thereafter, after the 2 months, the employee is offered insurance benefits as required by USERRA. In addition, as I indicated, we follow USERRA for no breaks in service for seniority, longevity, vacation accrual, and pension. When an employee returns to his or her position, insurance coverage is reinstated with no waiting period, no conditions. If you have any specific questions, once you've had a chance to look at this, I'm happy to address them.
Okay.
But the bottom line is I believe that we currently provide very generous benefits for employees, I understand the concerns with the potential for employees to come back following combat, and we provide those protections for their jobs and for their benefits, so they're amply covered.
All right, I'm gonna ask a question of the petitioner. Tom, in terms of looking at the spreadsheet, do you see any irregularities or have any questions on this? Because I thought that perhaps we were doing something that we weren't doing.
No, in fact,
this really spreads it out.
As council said, well, states and municipalities, of course, have to follow federal law. That's the floor. They must do that. And if it's not in their policies, they just have to follow it because it trumps whatever they have as a policy. And in serving on a task force or an ad hoc committee that deals with this at the state level, the issue of enforcement of USERA, I understand that. And in speaking with the mayor and discussing the policy, which, as I said, is a good policy, the main area really is, and I think council has laid this out, is really the distinction between the time frame or the time period for which a pay differential is afforded. And I understand it does have contract implications. So I'd really encourage, as an ex officio member of the committee, not as a working member or a full member of the committee to really focus in on the pay differential issue to the extent that that can be addressed, and if it can't now, that it's something to consider for the future, because 30 days training coverage, as I understand, as well as 180 days on deployment time. As we know, the Joint Chiefs of Staff have extended deployment times up to 15 months, which includes mobilization for pre-deployment training and then deployment overseas. So, and these extensions of time go far beyond initially what was often the 6, 9-month, or even 12-month deployments early on in this conflict. The other implication here is cost to the city. I understand that. So it may be helpful to understand, and maybe that's not information we'd necessarily have here tonight, how many employees we have and what the general percentages of municipal employees that are within the reserves or the Guard. Active duty clearly is a different issue because they're fully employed by the federal government. So this is really Guard personnel, reservists of any branch.
I'm sure Jeannie or Virginia can answer this question. How many employees do we have for National Guard reservists or National Guards people and reservists?
I don't have that information right here, but I could get that for you.
Okay. Mark?
Madam Chairwoman, let me just, if I can interject here. Let me just take a step back a little bit. I have had some conversations with Councilman Sadi, with Labor Council, with Virginia, and essentially, and I'm certainly not, I don't want to put words in the councilman's mouth, so just correct me if I'm wrong, but his proposal basically, we're not wedded to that. That's not really what we're here to discuss. At an analysis of what we currently offer, I wouldn't even say this was really the councilman's proposal. It was just an idea put forward by him that we're currently offering a much richer level of benefit. There are a couple of concerns that I have that I just want to share. There are some things that have changed in USERA. I'm thinking of USERA.
Yeah, no.
Of USERA that should be updated in our current policy, and I think Diane can explain that. Secondly, one of the things under other benefits that I don't know if this is clear in here is that we provide holiday pay to our firefighters, police officers that are deployed beyond the 180 days. So they get their military pay, plus they get paid an additional 15 days pay at their rate as just sort of an additional benefit to them that we wanted to provide. One of the things that we might want, my concern is that if we took this and put this in ordinance, there's a couple problems. That one, the process is so lengthy that my administration or future administration may not be able to react quick enough if there is a need to modify or change it. Two, I believe that would open the door to collective bargaining and negotiations, which we're not, I don't think that's the intent of what we're trying to do here. What we did in the past is we did a resolution that the council adopted saying this is the benefit. My suggestion would be that we would adopt another resolution tweaking the benefit, perhaps extending the 180-day pay differential, and making some of the changes that USERA has made in the last 5 years, and then re-adopt that before the council versus doing an ordinance if the councilman's amenable to getting there. And I think that would provide the flexibility for future administrations and not get us into having to negotiate back and forth with each of our collective bargaining units. In other words, this is a discretion that the city's providing because we want to say thank you for your service. In terms of how many people does it affect, over the length of time that I've been in office, we've probably had a handful of people deployed. I'm going to say in the order of magnitude of less than half a dozen.
Okay.
Most of them are police officers and firefighters. There's been an occasional not a civilian employee of the city that's gotten deployed. Most of them are young, and most of them have less than 5 years of experience working for us. Not that that matters, but just to give you a sense of what the pool of people we're talking about. So I don't have any issue with extending the pay differential. As far as I'm concerned, we can max it out to a year. I mean, I think that's, a year to 15 months. It doesn't bother me at all. Meaning we would go from 180 days to 1 year, and then we would make corrections that USERA has made, and then we would craft a resolution and bring it forward to the council. That's my suggestion. If there's any other ideas, I'm on the table.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Through the chair, I do agree with the mayor with regard to the implication of contract issues as well as the ability to adjust and adapt as the situation changes, that a resolution adopted by the council probably is the best way to proceed on this. In particular, with changes in federal law, we don't want to codify, into ordinance something that's going to change at the federal level and just simply refer to it changes at federal law. We want to have people to be able to look at it quickly and know what their rights are rather than having to go to the federal, the statutes, the U.S. code all the time. So I don't think, as the petitioner, and I think speaking on behalf of others who are interested in this, that a resolution seems a good way to go forward on this. And the extending to 1 year is a very nice proposal. The only issue, and I'm not sure if you spoke to this, Mark, is the training days. I know that generally 30 training days seems to be enough, but there is an increased push on having reservists and guard personnel go to additional schools now, so they're a little more combat ready. And maybe a small extension of that, like the 45 or 60 days of differential would help out in that area. And that would seem to be a very good proposal.
Okay, all right. Virginia, have you any comments or any questions?
No, I just agree with the fact that we need to be able to react and to adjust as need be, whether it be for active duty or other, such as after 9/11 and the help that was set down there and being able to adopt different things in terms of coverage for that. Any other disaster that people may be deployed for.
Okay. Pauline, have any questions? Mr. Esposito, have any questions?
I think the information we have in front of us is self-explanatory. Just to, may not be germane at all to this particular instance, but the federal employees do receive these benefits. I know from facts by being in the post office, when we went on training missions over weekends or 2 weeks training, the post office paid the additional salary if it didn't equalize. If we took a cut in salary, they made it up. So it's not a new proposal as far as the federal employees are concerned, but it is new as far as city employees concerned. I think it's a good policy, and I don't think there's that many people in the city that I know of. I can't think of anybody, as a matter of fact, unless the police or fire department had somebody that we're not sure of. But other than that, Madam Chairman, I think it's a good idea.
Pauline.
After reading it, and I found that the cities was a lot better than what has been proposed by the federal government. I feel that we've done a great job, and I think the city's always done a great job taking care of our military. So therefore, I'd like to make a motion to change the resolution, to bring our policy up to date with USERA. And I'd also like to make I'd like to change like from the 180 days to 1 year. And the 30 calendar days will probably change to 45?
60.
Or 60? 60
6
days?
0.
And so therefore, and I'd like to, so what I'd like to do is take no action as far as an ordinance goes, but just have this change
As a resolution.
as a resolution.
All right, I need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Any discussion on the motion?
Oh, no, you can follow up.
Discussion
That's
first.
fine. You're good, you're
And then
fine.
we vote.
That's it.
All right.
Just one question on the motion, Madam Chair. Pauline, you said something about the resolution to,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna change the
Oh,
resolution
you're
that we
gonna
already
change,
have.
okay.
I'll have Diane draft a
And-
new
but it's
A
resolution.
new resolution.
That we'll
Yes.
adopt.
This,
We're not gonna drag this out forever.
Resolution
We'll-
rather than ordinance.
We'll have
Don't
it
say
on
no,
the,
take no,
Yeah.
take no action.
But we're, I mean,
And
I
it's
don't want this to
coming before the
become,
common council
in August.
in August.
Yeah, I'll have one drafted for us in
Okay.
August to adopt, along with the committee report.
Okay.
because I don't want this to become an ordinance, because like we said, it could, we could have the problem. That's why as a resolution, it's good.
okay.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Adjourn.
All in favor?
All
Aye.
those in,
Yeah.
all those in favor say aye, all those say no. Adjourn.
I'm back.